This presentation, titled Tools, Terminology, and Technology for Auditors of Tomorrow, comes to us from Melike DeGregorio. Mel is the owner of GreenUp Academy and GreenUp Consultants. She is an internationally accredited third-party lead auditor by Exemplar Global for ISO 14001, ISO 45001, OSAS, RC 14001, and Environmental Health and Safety, EHS, regulatory compliance audits. Mel has 18 years of experience in the EHS and manufacturing world. In addition to her role as a consultant, lead auditor, and lead facilitator at GreenUp, she was a corporate EHS manager for a Tyco International Division, air pollution control engineer at Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, and production resource environmental coordinator at Frito-Lay. And with that, take it away, Mel.
Thank you, Mike. Hello, everybody. This is Melike DeGregorio. It's great to be speaking here. Let me just tell you about my companies real quickly. GreenUp Consultants was born in 2008. It's a environmental health and safety consulting company. We mainly focus on auditing lately, all kinds of regulatory compliance audits or management systems audits. And then GreenUp Academy is solely focusing on EH&S training via classroom trainings, webinars, etc., whether it's management systems or environmental regulatory compliance. Let me tell you about our agenda real quick. I'll tell you our learning objectives, and we're going to talk about the changes in the auditing world. We'll talk about virtual and remote audits, pros and cons, what is the process, how do we do it, some tools, technologies, and skill set for conducting effective remote audits. I'd like to share some best management practices and some areas that you need to be aware of. I think I'd like to talk about. Okay, so my goal for you guys today is just to talk about, again, changes in the auditing world, how to effectively conduct a remote audit, and do's and don'ts of this whole process. Well, as you know, we're going through this crazy pandemic, right, this year. So not that remote auditing was anything new due to COVID-19, but it was not as focused as it is right now. So due to these kind of changes and other site access related issues, travel restrictions, cost related issues, and you know, some corporate managers have a lot of facilities and they have to do a lot of audits, which kind of makes it tough on them. These kind of situations, or if there's an incident and you want to do an audit right away, in a situation like that, it's not easy to travel to the location right away. So hence, with these changes, remote audits come into place more than it was before. Let's talk about them. And let's just look at the definitions, because virtual and remote words are kind of used interchangeably. I use ISO 19001 2018 as a reference for the definition of that. I mean, it's fine if you want to use them interchangeably, but the correct way of using it is as follows. Usually virtual audits, we say virtual audits when they're an organization performs work or services using an online environment. So they're not doing it on site, and so their services are virtual, and those audits are basically virtual, right? And when it's a remote audit, basically you're using technology to gather information, all kinds of, you know, audit evidence and such. You do those things remotely. So if you think about it, you can conduct virtual audits remotely too, if you think about it. But just mainly, remote audits is the proper verbiage if you're going to do audits without being on site. That's what it comes down to, basically. So, like anything, there are pros and cons to the remote auditing process. And, you know, it's it's a change, right? So it's, even though it existed before, sometimes we can be resistant to change. What is it going to become? Is it going to increase our workload, or how is that going to affect everything else? So we can be slightly resistant to change. So that comes into place when we talk about remote audits, especially when I got a chance to talk to some clients. They always said that human interaction is irreplaceable, which in most cases it is. But if you plan a remote audit effectively, it's just, there's no reason why it cannot be conducted as well as an on-site audit would have been. So let's talk about the pros of remote auditing. Well, effective time management. Usually what happens, auditors go on site, we sit at a conference room, and then the auditee waits on us, and they watch us write, review, read, and all that good stuff. Well, with an effective time management, you can actually schedule the time slots where you're going to ask them questions, or you can review the documents on your own, offsite and such. So it can lead to an effective time management. The audits, again, if they're planned properly, they will be quicker with a higher efficiency, because in most cases it's document review, right? So other than the site tours and such. So you can review certain documents without the input of the site, really, and then you can always note the questions and discuss them when you talk to them again. So no travel costs for companies. That's a big deal. It's not always easy to find local auditors. So sometimes auditors get to travel internationally even, and that causes a lot of costs, right? So no lost time due to travel. That's big for auditors. Either from compensation standpoint or energy exhaustion, etc. So they're not gonna have to deal with that. They're gonna have a more flexible scheduling. That way auditors can better focus on the task, and they can work in pajamas by the pool if they choose to. Although in a situation like that, auditees get slightly jealous, so you may want to consider not showing the pool if you're going to do that. That eliminates distractions, because there's always distractions, people going in and out of conference room and things of that sort. And it's just overall a more comfortable and convenient working environment for the auditor, right? So what are the cons? Well, when you don't have human interaction, it kind of makes things a little bit harder. Obviously, there could be certain limitations on reading the body language, because technically an audit starts when you walk into the facility, and even like when you're just like chatting, the ice-breaking sessions, lunches, etc., the audit continues technically, right? So this part kind of might be a little bit lacking, because you're not gonna see them all. And then most people would say that there will be potential limitations in the site as a whole. Although if you use the good technology when you do the site tour, and kind of control the person who's holding the camera for you in a better way, and if you review the facility layout in advance, this can be controlled, managed a little better, I think. Connection problems, of course. Well, we're talking about technology. Either phone connections or Wi-Fi, this could be a problem. If, depending on the manufacturing environment of the client, the noise could be a problem. Missing details, time zone issues, or difficulty with hard copy record reviews. Certain records are kept on hard copy. So in situations like that, either, depending, of course, while following the security confidentiality guidelines, you can try to have them send you a sample in some ways. So the key areas of remote audits are basically pre-audit preparation, effective planning. This is the most important step, because you have to be ready. Normally, even when you do a site audit, you kind of have to be prepared a little bit. Not everybody does it, but it's always advisable to have some kind of knowledge before you go on site, right? So this comes into place. This is even much more important when you're going to do the remote audit, because you're not going to be on site. So you want to gather information as much as you can about the site before you start the audit. The second area is proper technology and competence. That's, you got to be able to use the technology and know what you're doing, basically, right? So and then practice. That's very important. So when it comes to auditor competence, I mean, obviously you have to have all the competencies that you would have to have as if you're doing an on-site audit. That goes without saying, right? So in addition, now you have to have the technical skills to properly use the technology. See, that's very important. And there will be issues. So you're going to be in a position where you don't panic, and then you can make adjustments along the way. If like there's a sound problem, there's a, I don't know, video problem or some kind of something, so you got to be able to adjust and move on quickly. You have to have the that ability, basically. You have to have clear and articulate communication skills. Notice how my speaking changed all of a sudden. That reminded me. You have to have a proper command of voice, because if you're gonna that's the only way they're going to understand, and that's the only way you're communicating at that point. So it's important to watch these things. And of course, experience in facilitating meetings virtually is very important, right? And practice, I mean, you gotta practice, basically, right? So ISO 19001 refers to remote audits also under section A16. So it does recommend that you kind of look into the risks associated with these audits. And each client is different too. So the same risk are not gonna apply to every single client. So that's why it's important to do the pre-audit work, so that you can discuss the logistics with the person, with your contact at the site, so you can kind of mitigate the potential impacts of these risks, right? Definitely get a floor plan, diagram, facility layout way before, so you kind of familiarize yourself with the facility. It's going to help you with the site tour. The prevention of background noise disruptions, like we discussed, permission to take screenshot copies of documents, recordings, and others. So I was doing a remote audit for a client, for example, and we used FaceTime to do the site tour, and they were okay with it. And I asked them if I could take pictures. FaceTime makes it really easy to take pictures. It's just press on one button. That's pretty much it. And they were okay, and I could take the all the areas where they were not conforming or violating, per se, for other kinds of audits. And then confidentiality and privacy is very important too when you do these audits. So these are all logistics. Again, they have to be discussed prior to the audit, so that when you're starting the audit, you're ready to go. So let me tell you about GreenUp's 3-step remote auditing process. So we combine it under 3 categories: before the audit process, after the audit. Not a rocket science. It's pretty easy, right? So let's talk about what we do. Step 1, before the audit. So well, obviously you identify the scope of the audit, focus areas, depending on, like, are there going to be focus areas that you have to kind of pay more attention to? And like I said, audit logistics, schedule of meetings and interviews. Sometimes interviews are not going to be like, we usually prefer doing interviews randomly, like you walk around and then pick this person, that person kind of thing. So this may or may not be, I mean, I've done it both. This may or may not be possible when you do remote audits. In a situation like that, you can ask them to bring people into a conference room where you can talk with them. You can ask them to be alone in the room with them. So you discuss the information security, like I said, if there's anything that they cannot be shared online. Audit plan is extremely important in this case. Since you do this pre-audit prep, and then you put everything in the audit plan and it's approved by the site and everything is good, and you can start it. If it's an environmental health and safety type of audit, then a regulatory site investigation comes into place. It's very important for you to get to know the site that way too. And also you discuss the submission of audit documents, right? There are going to be so many of them, obviously. So you can give a client a secure link to a like a OneDrive folder or Dropbox, or other kinds of whatever you're working with. Or sometimes the client will tell you, hey, we can only do this through our secure whatever. So basically the idea is discuss these things and know how this is going to happen, and have these documents uploaded at least a week in advance if possible, so that you have a chance to kind of take a look at them. This is just a sample document list. Hopefully they have a master document list. That makes life always easier for me. And if it's an environmental audit, the environmental permits, and OSHA programs, some internal requirements, definitely facility layout, aspects, legal matrix, again, depending on the type of the audit, right? So I always ask for their previous audit reports and their non-conformances, etc., so that I have an idea in terms of putting together the audit plan. So, and then, okay, so the second step is the audit process. So the audit process is pretty much the same. You do the opening meeting. I usually request that everybody turns on their cameras. Okay, yeah, with the new way of doing things with Zoom and everything, now people just, in most cases, they don't turn on their cameras, but I do kind of request it if possible at all, because that way you kind of put more personal touch into it, as if like you're there on site and you get to, you kind of seeing the person kind of, I think enhances the communication a little bit. That's how it worked out in my experience. So, I mean, if they don't want to do it, they don't want to do it. I mean, you cannot force them, but I at least like throw it out there. He discussed the audit plan, again, the scheduling of meetings, and then there's a site tour, of course. So a lot of people get confused with the site tour, how we're going to do it remotely, but it's actually pretty easy. Again, as long as there is good connection. My preference is to do a wall-to-wall site tour. I mean, it's going to depend on the type of audit you're doing. Also, obviously, you may not have to do that, but I would do like external grounds, like a perimeter tour, the roof, and then just wall-to-wall kind of. But say you're doing, again, depending on somebody is going to walk you through, right, with the camera, so you can have them. Feel free to ask them, just like, can you just get closer? Because sometimes they get nervous, right? They get nervous, or like they start talking and then they start showing like the ceiling or the floor. I'm like, what is happening? Can you just like turn your camera a little bit? So while you're talking, I can actually watch what's going on too. And I would always say, just, can you turn it this way? I noticed something there. Can you get closer? So like, feel free to direct the person who's kind of giving you the remote tour. Feel free to just ask her the question, because it's going to be, I mean, that's the only way you're going to be able to see everything, right? And then technology we talked about. So far we've been using FaceTime, and then during opening and closing meeting we use Microsoft Teams and debriefings also, and that seemed to be working perfectly. But it could be a different deal for a different company, basically. So that's why it's important to discuss the logistics before. And then you can have your some of the documents you may want to review with them while you're in the video conference. I always, like with the contact, I always kept it either like FaceTime or like video conference type of communication when I had questions. Again, it kind of makes it more personal and much better. And then, so we discussed the interviews and daily debrief, still the same as you would do when you're in an on-site tour through one of those video conferences. And then the closing meeting, basically pretty much very similar to what you would be doing if you were on site. So the last step is basically after the audit, right? It's just the same thing. You generate the audit report, do it as quickly as possible. Not being there is kind of increases the chances that you may forget things. I mean, obviously you're still going to take notes, by the way, especially when you do a site tour. You take notes like as if you were doing it, but still just submit the report as soon as possible. And then, schedule a conference call, a video conference call to discuss the report too. So I want to tell you about the best management practices. clear communication with the site. That's crucial. You just have to have that. And like if they don't get back to you, don't wait, just keep harassing them, because there won't be enough time left then for them to receive the audit plan. Then they might complain that well, we didn't have enough time. So that's why you want to follow up and make sure that everything's in order, right? So excellent planning is just super important. Technology rehearsal. Even it's okay to rehearse it even with the site, like you're going to have one contact, like say you're doing either quality audit or environmental audit, whatever, you're going to have quality or environmental person, so just rehearse it with them. And I always recommend that on the site facility side, they keep like a spare battery, so that because if the site is big, the phone battery kind of runs out, so you don't have to wait for the battery to charge. And we talked about it, pre-audit is extremely important, and definitely read when you do the pre-work, definitely read the previous reports to see where they're coming from. Make sure that they understand that the document list is readily available. So like this is the audit plan, like you would think it's a given, but well, it's not. As you know, common sense is not so common. So you may want to make sure that you tell the site that, well, these are the documents we're going to review. Or like if you're auditing environmental management system, make sure all your documents are ready, etc. Make sure that the platform has been discussed and in place. And also there's another thing I've come to learn, that you don't have to do, like, say it's a 3-day audit, you don't have to schedule it like 3-day consecutively. You can schedule segments of the audit, so that's okay too, if you would choose to do that way. Unless it's a registrar type of audit, but like if it's an internal audit, you can just do it in segments too. And it's always, I cannot tell you how beneficial to have if it's feasible, to have an IT person available, just in case there's a technological problem, especially data security related on the facility side. Usually that will be the problem, so that they can fix it right away and you can move on without wasting any time. Okay, so there are some situations, as great as everything sounds, there could be some situations that I wanted to get your attention to. Well, obviously we're people, right? Everybody has a different personality. So audits, people get nervous. Nobody likes them. I wouldn't want to be audited personally, being a professional auditor and all. But anyway, so they could be talkers. So talkers, it doesn't mean they mean anything with it, but just like if they talk nonstop, and if you don't know how to stop them in a timely manner, well, you run out of time. And remember, like, you're trying to manage the time effectively, right? So you cannot have that. So the nervousness, oversharing, sometimes what I would say, okay, like, I would say, I'd love to chat with you guys, but sometimes I may come across as if I'm cutting you off. That's not my intention, but that means I got the exact answer that I wanted to. So I'm moving to the next step. So just don't take it the wrong way. That's what I would say, so that I have the chance to kind of stop the conversation without being rude, because otherwise the time goes on and, you're done with nothing. So, be careful with site tour mishaps. That's why it's important to review the facility layout, so that the areas that you're going to look at, and if they kind of and I'm not saying they will, but if you feel like they may be hiding areas and stuff, you have a better idea, kind of. There could be situations where people, again, hide under technology mishaps. Oh, I don't know how to use this, so let's just not do that kind of thing. Well, you're going to have to insist, because you still have to audit that area. There's lack of proper follow-up on your audit trails. Like, for example, when you do site, say, okay, I ask a question, like, say I need this training record. They don't have the record, but somebody has to get it to me without me having to ask again once we're done, right? So just make sure, communicate them in advance, saying that, hey, I will ask, I'm sure I'll have some questions and I will want to follow up on certain documents when we do the site tour remotely. So since you're going to be holding the camera, just make sure somebody is with you taking notes, and then they get back to me with what I'm requesting. So communicating those in advance, at least, because these things happen, like they forget, or you have to, obviously you follow up too, but you shouldn't have to. They should be able to bring you or send you all the things that you were asking for. Look at time management. Again, I cannot emphasize it enough. It's very important. And then late delivery, be aware of the late delivery of the pre-audit documents. So that happens. So that's what I'm saying. Make sure you follow up as much as you possibly can with the site. Okay. So having said that, I'm hoping we achieved our objectives. And it was the changes in the auditing world, remote audits, do's and don'ts. And I wish you good luck out there. And thank you so much to Exemplar Global for this opportunity. Back to you, Mike.
And thank you, Mel DeGregorio, for that look at the tools, terms, and tech that tomorrow's auditors need to know about. And that concludes this presentation.